Frontline Gaming presents 40K Stat Center with your host, Val Heffelfinger and the Falcon.
Well, look at this. It's our faces on 40K Stat Center because we're trying harder than ever. Peter Colosimo to my left, to my left.
I think you got it. Valerie Bure Heffelfinger to my right.
Pavel Bure, one of the worst knee injuries I think I've ever seen.
Yes, but his brother didn't have that happen to him, so everything was fine.
That's true. Very fast in NHL 93, but this is not the adjacent show where Pete and I have been sheltering in place throughout the pandemic, but the triumphant return of 40K Stat Center. Now, Peter, I know that you had wanted to maybe give a little bit of a rundown of what's been happening in the 40K meta before we get to the events that we mentioned.
Oh, I can't do it. I got a beard now. I can't make the fart noise that I really want to, like I did as a child. The 40K meta has been in a pretty rough state for the last couple of months. Drukhari have been on a massive surge, 70% win rate for 8 weeks now. Absolutely just curb stomping the meta, but we're almost through it. I think this was the last week of that particular way of things, and I'm very hopeful that we'll kind of go back to that earlier COVID time when there was a lot of variety in the top fours. Everything was sparkly and new, and it was a good time to be alive.
The more innocent days of the COVID pandemic. Thank you for bringing us back there, Pete. Now, I guess then that leaves us no reason not to quickly go to the Atlantic City Open. Almost 300 players in attendance. I don't think they quite hit it. This is the first in an expanded series of events from our patrons at Frontline Gaming. Pretty exciting stuff. They booked a massive hotel type place that looked suspiciously like Bally's. Am I wrong about that, Pete? Did you get a Bally's vibe from the carpet?
I did get a pretty big Bally's vibe. It was almost like a mix between Bally's and the hotel that they've been doing BAO at the last couple of years. That kind of like mix of really terrible carpeting, but just like massive amounts of space.
And musk, I'm sure. The musk
for sure. You could smell it off of the pictures. That's
right. Now, and the other thing that you can see in the pictures is the terrain setup. Now, I was a bit nervous coming into this weekend because, ITC terrain has some pretty unique features, namely a lot of boxes and not a lot of ruins. So there was maybe some concern about how people were going to handle the terrain at the event. Pete, what did you hear about how that broke down?
Scuttlebutt from players that were in attendance was that the top 30 or 40 tables were decent. They were running the ITC Orc terrain, which is generally just a bunch of ruins, decent line of sight blockers if you're playing them with the right keywords. Which is a whole other story when it comes to like FLG terrain currently. But as you got further down the line, the terrain, it was a little suspect. There were some pictures that were posted both by Frontline Gaming and by just people in attendance. And a couple of the tables just seemed really sparse. And word I was getting from some people that had to play on those was it wasn't the best experience. A lot of feel bads turn one. When there just wasn't anywhere to hide in their deployment zones.
So what do we think? Is this something that can be fixed? What do they have to do to get the terrain up to snuff? Because that's kind of what they're known for is like, well painted, like an acre of terrain laid out across a massive, convention hall. What do you think needs to happen in order to make, Lone Star Open real nice?
Well, I think we just need to double up a little bit. There's like I said, that Orc terrain set. It's real prime. It works real well. The terrain set with the giant ruin, while I think that giant ruin's a bit in the middle, while I think it's a bit problematic, that particular piece, like in general, it seems fine. But when you get to that like industrial complex and some of the mix and match tables they were showing at the bottom end, those need like one or two really big pieces in each deployment zone. And one thing I would definitely do, especially with that asymmetrical design they're using with that industrial complex, is set up something where you move the terrain between rounds just to help with like the different deployment zones you're dealing with. because it is a big issue when you're using static terrain. The way that 9th edition has changed everything, it's going to lead to real feel bads moments. Anybody that's trying to run a mixed or like a more close combat oriented army is going to struggle, with the exception of something like Drukhari, where they have so many transports that they can like absorb that first turn, bulldozing.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, like if they like FLG has what 500, maybe 500 plus tables worth of terrain.
Yeah.
If we're doing 300-person events leading into the LVO, like this is the time where you just say, hey, let's maybe not double up, because that's probably a little too extreme, but let's add an extra 50% onto a couple of these tables, make them a little more symmetrical. FLG has what 500 plus tables worth of terrain. There's no reason why they can't, double up or, add 50% more terrain on a couple of these like lesser tables. Like just bring it all out, boys. Like show people what we've got. The big thing about FLG, like you said, they're kind of known for terrain. Near the end of 8th, there was definitely some rumblings about certain tables already kind of being a little weak. And 9th has definitely accentuated those issues with the changes to terrain rules. And like this is the time to say like, hey, we've got the stuff. We make our own terrain. Let's slap 2 or 3 more pieces on some of these problematic tables and just make it an enjoyable experience for everybody.
Yeah, and I mean, aside from maybe some of those things popping up a little bit, overall, I didn't hear a lot of scuttlebutt or grumbling about conduct. Things seem to work very smoothly. Very few interventions with players, which was glad. I'm really glad to hear about. It was something I was really curious to see how people would be at this event. Yeah. And yeah, things were smooth all the way up to the top 8 for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, word from Adam Solis, who was kind of like the backup judge there to kind of help things out, as he's long been one of the top judges for the LVO, was that he only had to throw 1 red card for the whole event, so that's really awesome, and just a handful of yellows. So that's like that was something that was very pleasing to me when you're coming out of a 1.5 year lull for a lot of people playing this game. I was just like you, a little nervous to see like how people would react once they were out in public again. But it's all good. And if you're looking at like the Frontline Gaming Community Facebook page, a lot of big props. I think just because people got to see their friends again, and that's the big thing, right? This game is about community more than anything. You and I kind of focus more on the competitive side more often than not, which is why I want the terrain to be better. But as long as people are there and they're having a time with their friends, like that's the big thing I think right now, this early in the game.
Absolutely. And you know what? The other stuff can be fixed as long as we're all getting along. These tournaments are still worth going to. Very happy about it. Let's do an awkward segue though to some performances. I mentioned the top 8.
Nobody cares.
I think. Well,
come on. Like they didn't use the new FAQ. They didn't drop a new admin. Who cares?
Wah. You know what? Who cares? Who cares? Richard Siegler did something with Tau. I don't care what sort of weird universe we're in. Richard Siegler, who turned his back on the enclaves back towards the end of 8th edition. His last sighting, of course, winning the Las Vegas Open with Iron Hands, and then I'm sure he's done stuff since, but I haven't been paying attention. He certainly hasn't done anything with Tau. Am I correct on that one?
You are. The main problem was the Greater Good supplement kind of came out at the very beginning of the COVID pandemic. We didn't really see any events where people could take out some of the more broken combos in that book, because if you watched people playing it online, if you watched any of like the Art of War streams, for example, which Richard is part of, you would see like that book really made Tau extraordinarily competitive. And then 9th kind of changed that. As we've seen, Tau have been in that bottom 2 or 3, basically the last whole 1.5 years of any kind of play we've seen. But in recent months, if you do pay attention to the Art of War, you'll see that Richard has brought out this Farside Enclaves list, and made tweaks here and there as he's gone that has shown a lot of promise. I think he's been 5-1 or maybe 5-2 with the list, like in the house.
Let me just do a quick rundown. What are we even talking about here? We're talking about a Tau battalion of Farside Enclaves, led by Commander Farsight and a Cold Star battlesuit commander, who is the Warlord, carrying the only Warlord trait through Unity Devastation, ATS and 3 missile pods, and a marker drone. Under troops, we got 4 Pretty straightforward units of 5 breachers and carrying a guardian drone and marker drone. In the elite section, we've got a Riptide with the amplified ion accelerator, something that came new in Psychic Awakening, a drone controller, velocity tracker, and this is something I have never seen, I think, in any context, 2 shielded missile drones. I thought that blew my mind when I saw that. Never seen that. Here's also something I think that Tau players will be happy to hear about. 9 crisis suits, the bodyguard variation, veteran cadre, and reactive countermeasures. He's got a lot of different stuff intermingled in here. He's got one guy with an air-bursting frag projector, shield generator, and the Iridium battle suit, as well as ATS. Everyone's got the extra -1 on rend. And he's got 2 extra guys with Iridium battle suits and 2 missile pods. And then everyone else has got 2 missile pods on there for a total of 9 pretty damagey dealing dudes, and 1 marker light drone coming with them.
Yep.
So that's a pretty cool unit. And then under fast attack, we've got 5 Pathfinders with the recon drone, grab inhibitor drone. These are favorites of Mr. Siegler for a long time. And then 4 Vespid Stingwings. That's pretty impressive. And then under flyers, 2 Remora stealth drones. And then 2 Devilfish. We're seeing some models here. We're seeing some models here that people love, they enjoy, they've missed. Pete, what are your thoughts on this before we actually hear from Rich himself?
Well, I mean, I could go into like a lot of detail about why I love this list, particularly in a Drukhari meta. Like a big thing for people that are looking at this list and trying to copy it, this list is designed with Drukhari in mind. This is 100% a list that Siegler feels he can win against like an equal or lesser player with, against, just based on like how well he plays this army with all of his experience into it. And then he has a very favorable matchup into Drukhari. All these missile pods, that's like the perfect like damage profile to blow up a raider. That's strength 7 multi-damage shot, and he's got so many of them. This crisis suit squad is kind of like the way to build the squad, really. The airburst fragmenting projector is what activates reactive countermeasures. So you have to get through that 1 bodyguard that's got a 4+ invul and a 2+ armor save. He's got toughness 5, and he ignores AP 1 and 2, which is huge when you're facing down a bunch of liquefiers, which theoretically are gone from the meta for a little while here. These breacher teams, they put out a ton of damage, and it can be completely unexpected when he pops the strat for the pistol 3 on them, or pistol 2 on his plasma guns, pulse blasters, but then he uses the pulse pistol as well. Commander Farsight allows him to fall back and shoot twice per game because of the change to the Modka rule. And these Remoras are absolutely devastating in certain matchups. The Firestorm stratagem is absolutely absurd on these 2 little guys. And for 60 points with 5 wounds, always considered to be in light cover, they always get their points back. And when you're able to pop out like a crap ton of mortal wounds within 3 inches of both these guys for 2 CP, like it's huge. This list does a surprising amount of damage, is actually relatively durable just because he has a ton of units he doesn't care about, and then he's got this big bodyguard unit that you want to shoot at, but you're not doing anything to. It's such a great list. Like, we really need to talk to Richard a little more about it. Maybe he can explain better, but I love everything about it.
Yeah, so we had actually a in the room correspondent. Andrew Braverman was doing some post action interviews with a lot of the players. So we're gonna cut over to him, of course. Before we get there, Richard made it to the semifinals before losing to Nick Nanavati. So almost went the distance with this list, which is pretty remarkable for a faction that's been sort of left for dead until their codex comes out.
7 wins in a row, 1 loss, like that wins almost any major in any other place, right?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's just kick it over to Mr. Andrew Braverman.
Fantastic. What did you think of the first ACO ever?
I think it was great. I mean, Frontline Gaming has set a really high standard for tournaments overall, and this one met that high standard. So I really enjoyed it. I got to see a lot of people I haven't seen in a while, and that was by far the most fun part, is the community coming together.
Here you are, coming to the top tables, placing in the top 8. What is it that's been able to get you there at the end of the day with the subpar codex?
Yeah, so Tower kind of ranked in those bottom bottom 3 codexes overall. For me, I really reps is the biggest thing. I've been playing a lot of Tau games on the Order Wars stream over the past couple months. I've been playing into good armies like Death Guard and Drukhari, and actually taking the wins. So that gave me confidence to keep testing the list. And what ended up happening was Tau is actually a really good army at scoring secondary points. The primary is the toughest part for Tau, especially getting it denied. So I created a list that actually helped me score primary, throwing multiple 5-man breacher squads into Devilfish. So if my opponent ends up trying to take my board control and my tanks away, I end up hopping OBSEC out on the objective. An OBSEC that can have a 5-up invuln thanks to the Guardian drone. So I created kind of a list that you actually have to have quite a bit of firepower to deal with over the course of a single turn to 90 points.
For all those people who are fan favorites of Tau, but they're too afraid to bring it because of the meta and whatnot, and on top of the advice that you already gave, what's a little something that you would give these people whose Tau is their favorite army to get out here and start playing it more?
Yeah, Tau is a movement precision army. They are not primarily a shooting army, they're a movement-based army. So there needs to be a lot of pre-game measuring and pre-turn measuring. You need to have a clear plan of exactly what your army needs to do that turn. So I play in a chess clock every game, and the biggest thing for me is I take those first like 3-4 minutes of a turn, don't move anything, don't declare anything, I just start putting dice down and pre-measuring. Here's exactly how my turn is going to play out. Here's what I'm targeting. I think that's huge for Tau because at the end of the day, like I said, it's not really about the shooting. Your shooting is going to be fine. It's about the movement and setting up your turns and your scoring. So movement, spend a lot of time on it.
Different tools in your list, these versatile units to be able to grab these secondaries, like you said, work on the primaries where they can. What units were able to live up to what you thought they were able to do, and what units in there didn't really get the job done?
Yeah, so pretty much everything. The list was super finely tuned, so everything worked exactly as I intended. The key units here are, of course, the giant Crisis Bodyguard unit. That thing is amazing. Whether it's shooting or combat, yes, Tau can actually do quite a bit of combat, whether making a charge move and then when you end an engagement range for each model on a 3-up, they take mortal wounds. That was crucial in killing succubi and witches that were trying to prevent me from falling back. The Crisis unit, if a commander is nearby, can also reroll all full hit and rerolls. And in that case, I was able to do quite a bit of things, like a 10-man Witch Blob with Morvane's Agonizer came into me a couple times. I was able to clear that bike squad of Drukhari bikes. So I really tailored this list especially to try and beat the Drukhari menace. Played against pre-nerf Drukhari. And honestly, Liquefire is not scary for this list. It's the witches and being trapped in combat. And that's why I went with bodyguards especially and had to play in such a way that I tried to mitigate no escape and Morvane's Agonizer. Perfect.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for that nice interview, and congrats again, Richard, for your great run there. Of course, I'd mentioned that Mr. Siegler went down to fellow housemate Nick Nanavati in the semifinals, and Nick was running, no surprise here, Drukhari. Although I was kind of intending to skim over this, Pete, you wanted to highlight it a bit because maybe it's not your average Drukhari list.
I will say this, like most Drukhari lists are just busted. At least up until this FAQ, there's not much more you can say about them. The thing I want to talk about Nick's list for is that it does skew a little differently from what our eventual winners list is. And it is something we should talk about because I think you'll see a lot of it still going into the future. Okay. You may not see the Dark Technomancer part anymore, but the rest is still like very legitimate. So we've got a Cabal of the Blackheart patrol to start things off. With what has become a big thing in the Art of Warhouse, this 8-man Court of the Archon unit with 4 Sliths and 4 Urgals. Prior to AdMech coming out, this was like an extraordinarily ridiculous unit because at 136 points, it's great for While We Stand, We Fight. It's got, toughness 5, really no armor save to talk about, but it's got an invuln, it's got feel no pain. They're hard to move, and they protect your characters, which is absolutely silly. He's got an Archon here with Splinter Genius and the Jin Blade. He's just a murder machine. Cabalite Trueborn with blasters and dark lances. This is a ballistic skill 2+, vehicle killer. You can pop that in a raider, do a lot of work. 5 Cabalite warriors, plain Jane. He's got 2 units of incubi. If you don't know what incubi do, they kill you in close combat. They don't shoot you, but it doesn't matter because they will murder you. He's got 5 raiders, 1 with a phantasm grenade launcher, 4 with all 5 with dark lances. The phantasm grenade launcher is a really cute tech because he can advance that raider and then pop fire and fade to move an additional 10 inches and get just like massive range if he puts his racks in it so that he can flame people. He's then got a Cult of Strife patrol with a succubus with the competitive edge triptych whip combo. This is this absolute blender succubus that prior to the FAQ could potentially have like 42 attacks. It's now down to the mid to high 20s, which is still kind of ridiculous for a 70.5 point unit. He's got 3 units of witches, one 9-man, and then 2 5s, and then he's kind of finishing this all off with a dark technomancer's patrol with the homunculus. He's got 3 units of racks with max liquefiers and 2 squads of 3 Chronos. And this is kind of the other piece of tech that we haven't seen a lot. We saw a little bit in Australia right after the Drukhari book dropped, but a lot of people had kind of just been focusing more on rack spam. The Chronos has not been impacted by the FAQ. It does have a flamer. So unlike the Warhammer community article, which indicated that no flamers would have access to Dark Technomancers anymore, the Chronos still does. It heals itself. It can provide full power from pain to a unit within 6 inches if it kills anything. It's got a lot of power. And at 80 points, if you fully buff up like the single dude, it's well worth the investment. Now, this may not be worth it in AdMech because AdMech just, can rad carbine the crap out of it. But it's still something to look for because damage 2, AP3 or AP2 flamers, possibly damage 3 because on 6s it does an additional damage. They're always something everybody needs to worry about. And Chronos actually have a body that they'll survive a lot of other armies' punches. So this is a really great list. We saw Nick lose in the bottom brackets to Brad Chester, but he managed to make the top 8 based off of battle points. His first game against Chester was very close, and then he proceeded to absolutely destroy the rest of his opponents, made it into that top 8, beat his quarterfinals opponent, Sasha Edelkraut, playing Black Templar, something like 100-50, and then ended up beating his opponent, Richard Siegler, his housemate, and ended up having to play Brad again.
And that's kind of an interesting thing when you don't have the super full bracket. Of course, there's a little bit of grumbling around the fact that there was no shadow round this time, which is usually used when you have too many undefeated players, not to provide separation for 1-loss players, which there was quite a logjam of at this event. So it's kind of neat. We had a couple players on 1 loss actually getting into the top 8, and we haven't seen that at something like the LVO. And I don't know.
The last time we saw this was at BAO 2018, when they cut to a top 8, and I believe only Jim Vessel was undefeated going into it because they had enough drops. And then he ended up losing to Jeff Robinson in the final. But that's probably the last time we've seen a cut to top 8 like this, where they just didn't have enough undefeated to make it all the way.
Okay, look, why don't we kick it over to Nick for a few quick comments, and then we're going to wrap it up with our actual champion. But first, Nick.
Typically, Brad Chester's variation he used a lot of grots, which I've seen before. I know liquefiers do it, played against them, but his version really put the pain to mind because it had so many more moving pieces than I understand. So that was something I didn't see coming. Aside from that, though, there was a lot of diversity. Like Black Templars made the top 8. Tau, I know Mr. Siegs at the Tau, but come on, he went far with the Tau. This is awesome. This is great. This is good stuff. So I'm very excited about the rest. Hopefully, the rest of the game can keep up.
Contenders, the usual suspects, all of you incredible players. We got a little bit of rivalries, of course, all friendly. Who's on your list that you want to take out this season as we start to get back into it?
Rivalries too. I want to take out Sean. We've been going at it for like a decade, and he's just always number 1 on my list.
As we get back into all these crazy events and majors and super majors, do you have any kind of general advice for all of these competitive players as they jump back into this particular meta?
I think as people get back, is this meta coming out of COVID, or maybe just getting back into the game because as it grows and expands, new people enter. I think you want to just get involved, start going, get a feel for it, and then coming back in the meta, don't try to chase it. Just make an army and just go with it, because the rate GW releases stuff these days, you're going to get love sooner than later. So just stick with it and learn your faction.
And we're back from Nick Donavati. Okay, went almost the distance. Glad to see him. Glad to see him in a finals. That was great in a big stage. And he's going up against, this got to be nice for him, a really good friend, Brad Chester.
Old man Brad. Possibly the oldest person to ever play Warhammer 40K. He, as far as I understand, was alive during the Civil War. I've seen pictures of him at the first Adepticon. He does look like he was a baby at that time. Yeah. So he's led a hard life.
The first miniatures in his first 40K army were actually made of tin.
Yeah. Tin and false teeth, wooden teeth.
Right.
As far as I understand it, they're glued together.
That all being said, Brad Chester comes to the Atlantic City Open with an army lovingly painted for him in a mad dash by none other than former fellow Frontline Gaming Network talking head loudmouth Al in pajama pants. Actually made this army for him in the course of like a week or two. It was insane.
I mean, to be fair, from what I understand, he was given months and then decided that
procrastinated. Very similar reasons as to why there's incredibly limited graphical innovations on this show. I had months to prepare them, and Rich, the producer, threw some things together when I didn't do it. So that's how things go.
As was expected. I mean, like, I'm not putting much effort into this either. Don't worry.
One might say, you're just natural talent, and that's why I'm here. That's good.
That's what my wife says too.
Let's just move on to Brad Chester. Yes, he's old. Yes, his army was painted for him. Yes, he smells faintly of mothballs. Yeah, but he did get to the end. He had enough left in the tank, and he did take down Nick Donavati. I thought that this list, if there was like stereotypical, this is what was evil about Drukhari, like a standard template, would you say this list kind of is representative of everything that was bad with the world?
Yeah, it's pretty close. It's when Drukhari first came out, it was very obvious Dark Technomancers was very good, and when we started checking the data on them, like the lists that we're working, we're taking one patrol of Dark Technomancers. Maybe they had grotesques, maybe they didn't, and then they were trying to tech as much as possible. So they had Cult of Strife in there. They had Cabal of the Blackheart. Brad was running Cabal of Poison Tongues. We could redeploy previously. Redeploys Raiders, which does have a really great effect into certain other armies. But what we saw in the last couple of weeks was everybody just realized, why do that when you can just take the most broken thing and then take more of the most broken thing?
Yeah.
And you'll probably just do better anyway. Like, who needs tech when you can just roll a whole bunch of dice and don't have to worry about rolling to hit, right?
Correct. Yep. Yeah, I mean, just cut out the middleman, really.
Cut out the middleman. It's what I've always said. It's like the old European way of doing things in 40K. I hear a Hive Tyrant is good. Maybe I should just take 8. People in North America, at first, they're always like, ugh, that seems bad. There's no way that's good. Yeah. And then one guy does it, and they're like, oh, wait, this was good this whole time, wasn't it? So basically the same thing here with Brad's list. We've got a Drukhari Cult of Strife patrol with a Succubus. This one is the Dark Lotus Toxin Precision Blows combo. This Succubus can put out like 12 mortal wounds in a combat phase. So while not as many attacks, it's definitely getting damage through on more elite units that you're going to struggle against. He's got his 25 Witches. They're really great at holding stuff up because of shard nets. They do lots of damage. They definitely always punch up at 50 points for a unit of 5. 2 squads of Incubi. 10 Hellions. Hellions are a unit that have been like on and off performing. This is really great for the Mortal Wound Bomb. You can just fly over a character and delete it when you need to. They take up a lot of board space. He's got a second Succubus. This one is a little more plain Jane, running Glaive Exquisite. And then he's got 3 units of Racks with Liquefiers and 6 Grotesques with Liquefiers. And then he ties that all up with a second Dark Technomancers patrol, because that other one was as well, with a third Succubus, this one running Competitive Edge and the Whip, and tying it all up with another 15 Liquefier Racks, 5 raiders, and another 5 incubi. So this is taking all the best stuff, I think, in the Drukhari pre-FAQ and saying, I'm just going to take all of it until I'm not.
He took all of it, and then he took it all. So why don't we go back to Andrew Braverman? He's got Brad Chester on the right after his win here, wearing a 40K radio T-shirt, just in case we didn't realize how vintage Brad was due to our bad jokes. So let's kick it back over to Andrew.
I am here with the inaugural champion of the Atlantic City Open, the old man of 40K himself, Brad Chester.
This guy.
Brad Chester, congratulations on your win. The first ever Atlantic City Open. How are you feeling right now? Tell me about the event overall.
Well, the thing is that I wake up, I piss excellence, of course. It was literally the hardest tournament I've ever played. I played. My 2 people I beat on the way here were also in the top 8. So Nick Nadavati and Tom Ogden, I had to beat them both after another, Nick in the finals, Tom in the semis. And I played every game against people that were really, really good. So it was one of those tournaments where it felt like every game was on the wire and had to play really, really well. So it was very stressful, and I'm very happy that I won. I'm very proud of this win, actually.
Now, with all of the other Dark Eldar players that we're seeing out there, the variations on the lists and the different styles of play, is there a common mistake that you're seeing these guys come out and make that you would like to kind of put the word out for?
For sure. A lot of the Dark Eldar guys, the thing is that with Dark Eldar, you either go very all aggressive or you go very passive and look for the counter punch. If you do half and half, you're literally setting your opponent up to collapse on your army, on half of your army, basically. And I saw that happen quite a bit over the weekend with people that played me also. It's just, if you either commit or don't commit.
Now, when people are often talking about who's going to place in the top 8, who's going to take the W at these kind of events, while you are an extremely veteran player and people know who you are, your name isn't one that gets brought up in a lot of those conversations in the larger aspect. How does it feel to be able to come here and against those names that everybody's talking about all the time and earn your spot amongst them?
It feels super good because I've been winning. I've been doing Best Generals before Best Generals. Anybody notice Best Generals? When everything was overall and I'd never painted an army in my life. So I used to be just the Best General guy. So I've been doing this since 1999, old man Brad in the house here. So I've literally been winning tournaments since 2000 in Best General. So, yes.
Is there anybody out there that couldn't make it to the Atlantic City Open that you'd like to shout out or give some props to?
Pajama pants. Made my entire army as a gift. Literally painted, made my display board, and made every single unit in my army. Either cast them or had them before and gave them up to me. And shout out to Mr. Alan Baramovich, Mr. Pajama Pants. Ladies and gents, this is Brad Chester from the Art of War. Come to us all next month because we're going to be going over everything from Atlantic City, from how Siegler did, how Nadavati did, how Leonard did, how myself did. I don't know if you guys remember, this guy won the tournament. But we're going to be talking about all of the meta from the tournament, where it's going to, what the new meta changes are, and we're going to be talking about everything. And we really appreciate you guys tuning in, helping out, making us have a better hobby, and appreciate you watching.
And we're back from talking to Andrew and Brad. Congratulations again, Brad. No more jokes. He's been on a tear as well. I think this was something we talked about pre-show.
Absolute tear. I think he's at 5 top 4s in this kind of almost post-COVID world, just absolutely wrecking majors and GTs. The only thing stopping him is himself.
Right. Okay. Well, we're just going to leave that one hanging there because I think it's time we go west and cover a different event. This one has an incredible title, the Utah Gamers Alliance Open GT, held out in Utah. And of course, Of course, we're not going to be talking about an event from Utah without, of course, delivering the mail via Rich Kilton himself. Now, this was supposed to be a major, didn't quite get the numbers. I think they wound up at 43 players. But, Pete, there was something kind of special about this event, which was?
So this was the first event to take on both the FAQ and the new AdMech Codex. Now, unfortunately, it was in Utah, so nobody with AdMech showed up, despite having the option to. But still, it's definitely some interesting insight into like where the meta is going to go. The Drukhari players in attendance did very well. 2 of them did get to 4-0 before they took their first loss. So there were like when we got into the final round, of the 3 undefeated, 2 were Drukhari. They aren't allowed to run Dark Technomancer liquefiers anymore, so they had to pivot to something else. And we got to see some new interesting tech out of them. Mostly doubling down on Cabals for more Trueborn, or switching into Dark Creed for their racks so that they get that extra leadership penalty, which allows Phantasm grenade launchers to do more mortal wounds, and also allows those Incubi to get a ton more fight lasts off. It's definitely interesting tech depending on where you're playing.
Well, I was going to ask you. Obviously, we're in Utah. We're going to hear about Rich Kilton, and I'm just curious, what did he do differently with his Dark Eldar list?
So what Richard did was he chose somehow, for some insane reason, to play Orks instead.
Right. I mean, that's some serious Drukhari tech right there.
It is.
Just play a different army.
Yeah, I mean, not very many people have done it. We talked about Richard Siegler earlier. John Lennon famously decided after one event that they were too broken for him, so he made an even dumber list to play against them. The great thing about Utah, and something I've been trying to tell people, is like they have this team, the Double Dutch Rudder. Not sure what that even means. No idea. But they've got like 3 or 4 of these just ancient men, much like Brad Chester, who've been playing this game for 700 years.
Right.
They have never swapped armies. Not a single time, right?
They're just holding strong.
They just hold strong. Like Lou Rollins, 3 apples tall, plays his Death Watch to death. Thomas Hegstrom Oakley, he recently switched to Death Guard, so he's completely making a liar out of me, but he played Blood Angels no matter how terrible they were.
That's a whole show.
Yeah, that's a whole show.
Death Guard?
Like, it hurt my heart to see it. Like, I cried into my pillow when I was reading through the lists. I'm really hoping this was like his son or something playing under a moniker or something. But anyway, like their team, just a bunch of guys that love their armies. And Rich Kilton, probably above anybody, cannot break away from Orks.
The personification of an Ork player. Rich Kilton, he's awesome. He's been featured on the show many times. If you're lucky, I actually managed to connect with him later today and record an interview that I'll slice in here. So we'll see what happens. But before we get to any of that, I thought I'd read off to you his incredibly hard to understand Ork list, and that is incredibly sarcastic because this one is pretty straightforward. We got a Death Skulls battalion. We got a Warboss on Warbike with Tequila Claw and Brutal but Cunning. He's your warlord. We got a war boss with a power claw and a custom shooter. And then we got a weird boy. He's a warphead, so he gets 2 spells, maniacal seizures, fists of Gork. In troops, we got 2 units of 30 Choppa boys, 1 unit of 10 Choppa boys. The knobs carry big Choppas, 21 Gretchen. That's right. The old war boss still carrying a lot of Gretchen. There's some more in the next detachment as well. Under elites, we got 2 units of 5 commandos. We've got a pain boy. In fast attack, we've got 2 units of 5 storm boys, one of which has a knob with a kill saw, the other one with a big choppa. And under heavy support, we got 2 single smasher guns, and then 1 unit of 3 smasher guns. And then finally, we got a truck with a big shooter. And then, although this is mostly Death Skulls, he does add a little bit of a sprinkling of the Goth Patrol, which includes none other than Gazgul, Uruk, Mag, Thraka. I think I got that one right. Probably not. And a weird boy. This one has the ones that you were probably looking for. Warphead. He's a Warphead with Warpath and to jump. 10 Gretchen and a Pain Boy to use the stratagem to heal up our friend Gazgul Thraka. Pretty cool.
This is a beautiful list. I think the best thing about it is it doesn't skew. What we've seen, like Orks have done very well in 9th edition, really up until the Dark Angel and Death Guard codexes dropped. When they were kind of at their peak, Orks were on a bit of a tear. A lot of people kept kind of shunning them down, but they kept winning GTs and kept top 4ing things. But it was always heavy skew. It was 200 and some odd boys. It was all of the buggies. Those were the lists that were working. And then you have old man Rich Kilton coming on in here, and he's just like, boys, you're doing it wrong. I just want 70 boys. I just want 5 smasher guns. I don't want anything fancy. You just play the mission. And he did. Yeah. And when you look at who he had to play against through this whole event, like his game one against Don Huson, a very well-known player in the Chaos community, ex-BAO winner, playing Death Guard. Don tables him in that game. Rich still wins because he plays the mission. He then plays against, I think, Colin K playing a Mastodon, which is just foolishness. Colin, put that away. Stop it with your super heavy supports. You're just stop it. But, beats him on stream, plays against Chaos Knights after, and then proceeds to play against like the top 2 Drukhari players at the event and beats them as well. Just because he plays the mission. This list is a mission list. There's nothing fancy about it. I'm going to steal objectives from you until you kill all my guys. And if you've ever played Rich, which, my first ever real GT/major game was what I had to do. He is like a master of board control and positioning. And so this list is just everything he loves. You'd think someone like that would love 200 boys, but like, I don't think his back could handle it because he has to carry the weight of his entire codex on it already.
That's right. They're on his back. So I hope that we are now going to cut to a quick little interview with the man himself, Rich Kilton. So we just wanted to touch base with you because, this is getting towards the end of the show, but we had to know, everyone was saying, give Drukhari time, the meta has to adjust. And here it is. The meta adjusted. Turns out it's Orks. Why were you able to beat so many Drukhari players and actually win a GT? And
like Falcon said, with index Orks. No, I don't know if you knew this, but I played Don Huson in the first round.
Yeah.
So I mean, I also beat a Nurgle, so a Death Guard army as well.
Yeah, you had one heck of it was a pretty serious run that you made to get to the top table, wasn't it?
I mean, a lot of it is just playing with the OBSEC that Death Skulls have. That was really the focus of my army.
Yep.
I held all 3 of my what you would call meta armies that I played against.
Mm-hmm.
I held all 3 of them to 0 points in turn 2 and turn 3. And in particular, the Storm Boys were what did that for me. The OBSEC Storm Boys leaping out of the truck and going and assaulting raiders or assaulting something, and then just stepping on the objective.
Yeah.
That's all they did, and just said, because they don't want to get their OBSEC units out because I'll shoot them.
Yep.
So they stay in their transports, and then I just hit the transport. I hurt the transport, but I take away their primaries.
That's amazing. So it was the Storm Boys jumping out. That's like an index 8th edition trick, having that kind of a thing jumping out of a truck.
You gotta come up with stuff, and sometimes recycling old tricks is what you've got to do.
Yeah, man, that's fantastic. So I gotta ask, what's going on with the Ghazghkull detachment?
So Ghazghkull is just himself, without really. He does buff the army, but my boys aren't the killers that they used to be.
Right.
Boys now are just holding objectives. Although in my final game, I hope they get the stream up for that, because there's a great move where he had a raider along the side of the board, and I was able to pin it with an advance in charge by Grots and boys combined, and I killed a raider full of guys with nowhere to jump out. It was great. He moved up to threaten my smash-a-guns, and he was pinned along the wall, and I went, well, I'll advance in charge over there, and the Grots advanced, and they charged like 11 inches and got behind the raider, and then the boys just came in and killed it, and that was a lot of points to lose on turn 2. But it was really the Storm Boys in all 3 of those games. Well, probably the 2 Dark Eldar games, the Storm Boys won the game. OBSEC guys that can fly across the table.
That's really wonderful. All right, cool, man. Any shout outs you'd like to make before we wrap up? Any big highlights you want to call out?
Yeah, I mean, this tournament, Lou Rollins did a great job putting it together. And, we had people from California, Seattle, we had Denver people, great opponents. Everybody had a lot of success. And then I just have to shout out one of my teammates that I've shouted out a lot of my teammates, but Aaron, he really does nothing for me, but I have to shout him out because he said so. No, I have a great team and they support me, and I'm glad to see you guys back in business. I'm excited to hear more.
We've got at least one episode, so hey, that's something.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure to have you on the show, Rich. What's your next event?
Well, the team event is the next one scheduled. I might try and pick something up before that. The team event in Vegas.
Oh, great.
I'm also going to Charity Hammer. I don't know if you knew that, but I'm going to Charity Hammer this year.
Yeah, actually, Pete was mentioning that he was happy to see that you were going to be going. So that's that. Give that a plug. What's the deal with Charity Hammer?
It's in August, and it's in Seattle, and there's a lot of some of the best players around are going, and I was very honored to be invited, and it's for a great charity that we'll be supporting, and they'll be playing like 90 hours of 40K.
Yeah.
Watch and support. There'll be hijinks and really competitive high level play.
Yes, I'd say that's accurate. And the old war boss certainly counts as one of the best players around. Thank you very much, sir, for being on the show. And can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Thank you very much.
And we're hopefully back from an interview with Rich Kilton. If not, he's a really nice guy. You can go back to any of our previous shows that featured Rich. They're all good interviews and probably still pretty relevant to what he's doing even now.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't changed anything since second edition, so.
That's right. Terracon, which was in the southern hemisphere where it is currently winter, unlike up here in Canada where it is briefly summer.
Yeah, so Terracon is a long-running Australian event in, I believe, New South Wales. It's been a major now for 7 years, I think going all the way back to 2014. So it's got a lot of history. And their cutoff for rules was May 31st. So they did allow the new AdMech Codex, and I believe 4 AdMech players did show up.
Okay.
There was one that went 5-1, and then I think the rest were they did perform admirably for their first event. But the big thing was that they didn't include the Drukhari FAQ. It came out 1 week too late, and they didn't pull back. This is how it is, boys. We're not going to make anybody change any lists. And maybe the event kind of suffered for it. If you look at the top 4s all over on downunderpairings.com rather than Best Coast Pairings, if you guys are trying to figure out what we're even talking about, it is Drukhari, 1, 2, and 3. All with lists that are very, very much dead now, and will require some modification in order to be playable again.
Okay, but who wound up on top?
So the guy that wound up on top is probably the fellow that's gotten the most out of 9th edition so far in competitive play, Adam Napier. He has top forward several events with Necrons coming into Terracon. Recently he went undefeated with a whole host of warriors where he just gave up on actually trying to have tech pieces and was just like, you'll have to kill these 80 warriors before you can do anything about me. Yep. But even he has pivoted to Drukhari, at least temporarily. This list is actually very similar to Brad Chester's, except he didn't go all in on the Dark Technomancer nonsense. He took a couple extra tech pieces in here. Still a great list.
He was feeling cute. And,
feeling cute, wanted to be different. Adam is a great guy. He is the TO of Adelaide Uprising, which this last year was Australia's replacement for CanCon. So he does handle some pretty big events. I've talked to him several times. Seems like an awesome dude. And I do believe we got a clip of him just kind of going over a little bit of how his games went at the event and talking about where he's going to go now that the FAQ's dropped.
All right, bring us home, Adam Napier.
Hi guys, Adam Napier here, winner of Terracon 2021, 6 rounds, 69 player GT in Narracourt, South Australia. It's halfway between Melbourne and Adelaide, about 500 kilometres between each. I took a Drukhari list, Dark Technomancers, Cult of Strife, and Cabal the Blackheart detachments. I went into the tournament expecting to go at least probably 5-1 with obviously a very competitive list. The field itself had been trimmed down a little bit due to COVID concerns. So a lot of the big name players that may have made the trip over didn't actually end up making the trip, which certainly helped the 6-0 run that I ended up having. Going into the event, I was obviously concerned about a few matchups. There weren't too many Drukhari players, luckily. There was only 4 other Drukhari players at the event. I ended up playing through 2 of them. I was concerned going into the event. We have a bit of a night meta over here, so we do tend to have a few Chaos Knight lists, and that's not a particularly good matchup for Drukhari, so I was concerned heading into those. And also, obviously, a couple of the Space Marine builds that are very well keyed to take down the Drukhari and everything that they do. Looking at the list after the event, I will probably make a few little changes to the list. First, I'll talk about the event itself. So I played into Thousand Suns, Death Guard, 2 Drukhari lists, what was the other? Custodes list, and 2 Custodes lists. So out of all of that, the Death Guard probably pushed me the hardest overall for the game. It was a big win in the end. However, I only had a couple of models left on the board, as did he. So that was quite a substantial shellacking I got there. Morty, as always, causes problems for just about everyone. I also played my round 4 match, which was straight on the stream table. I played into Gabe DeLolo, a very well-known Dark Elder player from here in South Australia as well. He is undoubtedly probably the better player out of the two of us and definitely knows the Codex a lot better than I have. He's been on Drukhari since day dot, a long time ago, even in 7th and 8th. So he's very aware of what the Codex can do and how to play the army. He had eschewed the Dark Technomancers knowing that the nerf was coming. I took the risk knowing that the nerf would come. And when the nerf did come, the lists had already been locked in. So the event opted not to use it, only being about 6 days between event and drop of the FAQ. So I was managed to sneak in under that. The liquefiers certainly came in play. Talos, crutch moment, blew up 2 raiders on its own. And that probably sealed the game really there. And then there was a couple of little errors that happened here and there. Gabe ended up clocking out towards the end of his turn 3, which certainly helped run the score up for me towards the end. But it was pretty close up to that point. But I think it probably would have been a win for me, regardless of whether he had clocked out at that point. Moving forward, the Dark Technomancers will remain in my list. I will be dropping the rack element. I'll be getting rid of the competitive edge Razor Flail Succubus, as even before the nerf, she wasn't very good. I've used her about 20 some odd times. Never once been impressed with her. She's never really done any work for me, so she'll go. I'm going to look at adding in Chronoses as a Dark Technomancer nerf, specifically targeted liquefiers, not Chronoses, with 2 guns and a relatively durable platform for a low cost. They're a good place to put the overcharging, and their ability to regrow wounds and models certainly helps as well. So I'm going to look to go there. In the immediate future, if the guns either get nerfed or don't prove to be as effective as I would have hoped, I'll probably be looking to move to the Neg 1 damage coven for the Chronoses. So the winnings of the event will be going into Chronoses for the immediate future. So thank you very much, guys. Good to have you back on air.
And that's it. We're back. Thanks, Adam, for your thoughts. We're back. We're back on the show. We're back in general. There's a lot of backness. Oh, we're back tomorrow on the Honest Wargamer. With Rob in the morning, right, Pete? You're gonna be there tomorrow?
Oh, I'm gonna be there. Like I wake up at 4 a.m. every day now, just so that I can be wide awake for the adjacent show.
Do some push-ups, some sit-ups, get ready for the adjacent show.
I really need to start doing push-ups and sit-ups. Like, I'm really glad that this whole screen thing only shows nipples down.
Nipples
up.
Nip
down is a bad scenario right now. So really got to get that fixed up. Hoping that by LVO I'll be trim and fit, or at least just have a tiny Nick Not a Body Punch.
I think this has been a pleasure. Thank you to everyone who lent their faces and voices and all of the and such to help us. Thank you, Richard, who's our producer, has actually produced all the shows in the new FLGN lineup so far. We'll be handing off to some capable people soon, but not until I've yelled at Richard a lot. He was going to continue helming 40K stats, and it should be smooth sailing from here, folks. No wrinkles whatsoever, right, Pete?
No, just the ones on my face as I age and become ever closer to my death, my mortality.
That's right. And before your eyes, now in video, you'll get to see Pete waste away.
Just absolutely waste away. I'm so glad I'm fat, because otherwise everybody would be scared. They'd just be like, "Oh, look at that! Look at that pasty man."
Oh, so pasty. Look, final comment I'm going to make is that the last show that's going to be revealed, probably the best show, I think, that we've got coming. This one maybe Pete will actually watch. Grim After Dark, starring John and Danny of former and present Mob Rules fame. They're going to keep doing that show. But every Tuesday night, they're gonna do an interview, and they're gonna have a longer form, more rambly, probably less insulting interview with Brad Chester tomorrow night. And that's going to be streaming live at 10 p.m. Eastern Time or 6 p.m. Alaska time, because somehow they're further north than Peter the Falcon.
That's true.
So, without further ado, you got anything else to say, Pete?
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye indeed.